So glad you're with us today. Let me tell you, it is so much easier coming out and preaching after these people sing. You know what I'm saying? They are just incredible. Every week, they just give everything and do such an incredible job. Those of you that are new with us, we started a series last week called Your Best Life. And it's a series in the book of James. We'll be in chapter 3 today, and it continues on. James is the little brother of Jesus, and he did not become a follower of Jesus until after the resurrection. Now, he watched everything his older brother did. He realized that he was without sin, but until he was put to death and came back from the grave, after that, James was a believer. In fact, he became a leader in the early church, and he knew more about Jesus than anybody else. And so he wrote a letter to those that were following Jesus in this new movement, and he explained to them how to live the Christian life. And so today we're starting to look at the things that he tells us that we need to do in our life to live the best life we possibly can. Now, I'm going to ask you to do something. You're not going to want to do it. It's a little strange, and you're going to think it's weird. If we all do it together, it'll work. If only a few of us do it, it's going to be awkward. When I count to 3, I want you to stick your tongue out and hold it out. Some of you are already out. You're like, I'm gone. Picked the wrong Sunday to visit this place. I knew it was weird. I didn't know it was that weird. Just do it with, please. Don't leave me up here alone, all right? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. All right. Some of you didn't do it. Just want to know you're not going to do anything in the message if you won't do that simple little thing. And what this is to do, it's actually to show the content of today. Today, James is talking about that little demon we all have in our mouth called our tongue. And he is saying that until you learn to control that tongue, you're not a mature Christian. You can't say you're a true follower of Jesus unless you can learn to manage that little bitty tongue, because it sets the course of your life. Now, many of you know this, and he goes on, he talks about how with the same tongue we bless and curse. And we've all experienced that. I'm watching the LSU game. There were times I was blessing, times I was cursing. My grandson came over to watch it with me after halftime, and it changed my vocabulary completely. It was hard to watch the game with him sitting there in that second half, but I was so glad. He is in the room today. He turns 5 today. Y'all wish Jackson a happy birthday. I don't even know where he is, but he's out there somewhere. Where is he? Where are you, Jackson? There he is. All right. So anyway, he made me very aware of what comes out of my mouth during a football game. And I need to repent many, many times. Now, yesterday wasn't as bad because you may not know, LSU won. So I was happy man, very happy man. Some of you are happy, some of you aren't. The reason James talks about the tongue is very simple. Do you know that 1/5 of our lives we spend talking? 1/5 of our life, now some of you got that beat by a mile. I mean, some of you 2/5, 3/5, I get it. Only time your mouth stops is when you're sleeping. And so that's fine. So of course, James is gonna talk about something that important, and he's gonna talk about it in such a way that helps us understand the importance of what comes out of our mouth. A lot of times, he's quoting from Proverbs. In the book of Proverbs, there's these incredible, incredible statements that help us live life. And in Proverbs 18:21, it says, death and life are in the power of the tongue. You can speak words of life, you can speak words of death. All you have to do is Google and see the hundreds, if not thousands, of teenagers who are living out this verse because of bullying. There are teenagers who are committing suicide, not because of drug abuse, not because of abuse in the home, not because of neglect, but because of bullying. And we live in a time that you can't get away from it. When I was young, when school was out, bullying pretty much stopped because you lived out in the country and didn't see anybody. And so nobody could bully you. But now it never stops. And there are teenagers who are ending their life because of the power of words. We had a young mother put it into her life in our community because of the power of words. Words are the most powerful thing, and we are so careless with them. And so James is saying, if you want to be a mature follower, you're going to be careful what you say. You're going to look at the words that are coming out of your mouth, and you're going to understand they have power, and they have the power of life and death. In Proverbs 12:18, It says, there is one whose rash words are like sword thrust, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. And so with this mouth, we can curse in this mouth, we can bless. And when I read this verse, I think so much of parenting. And right now, all of you are going to feel convicted that have kids because you haven't controlled your tongue the way you want. And we wound our children with the words we say. And it's amazing what they hold on to. I'll give you an example from my life. Back when I was 8 years old, I remember now, we didn't get to swim much as kids because there was no access to pools, and Mom got real mad when we swam in tanks. And so for us, really the only time we would get to swim is like when we went on vacation and we'd stay in a little motel and they had a pool. I remember I was about 8 years old and I was just really learning how to swim. And I was swimming across the pool at 8 years old, and my mom was watching. And there were some other people at the pool, and they made a comment to my mom, and they said, wow, he's really a good swimmer. My mom simply replied, and don't judge her, because I was a little boy, 8 years old. My mom simply replies, if you think he's a good swimmer, you should see his little brother. Now, that doesn't sound like a big deal, and it really wasn't. He was 4 years old, and he was a really good swimmer. In fact, he was a great athlete all through his life. He was a much better athlete than I ever was. My mom was not putting me down with that statement. She was simply commenting that my little brother was good at that. And so I blame her for not being able to swim today. I'm kidding. Some of you have heard my stories about I swim to survive and that is it. But I heard that. I remember that 46 years later, I remember her saying that. And while, of course, I've worked through it and it's not a big deal, the guilt comes when I realize that my children are holding on to things that I have said carelessly, in anger, or foolishly. Things that I may not have even meant, just like she didn't mean it, but they're holding on to it. And so if you're a parent today, I just tell you, hold your tongue, understand in that child, they are hearing so much and you never know what they're gonna hold on to. And so James begins to talk about this, and he starts with a warning. He says, not many of you should become teachers, my fellow believers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. Man, that gets on me hard. This verse is convicting to me. Those of you in the room that are a teacher, those of you in the room that are coaches, you just don't know the power that your words say. And so James is saying, listen, don't try to be in those positions because those positions can cause a lot of harm. And you're going to be held accountable for the lives you hurt through your careless words. So be careful being a teacher. Now, the reason this gets me so hard is because my greatest regrets in 30 years of ministry, my greatest regrets are the careless words I've said. It's when I've hurt people. It's when I've said something in the wrong tone. It's when I've said something to the wrong person. And my words have been some of my biggest regrets. When I started, I was what you called an angry prophet. Man, I spoke the truth, but I spoke the truth only. As I've grown older, I hope that God has begun to shape me into a spiritual father that still says the hard thing, but says it out of a heart of love. Not out of heart of judgment, not out of heart of anger, but out of heart of love, because that's what a teacher is to do. So if you're a teacher or a coach, he says, be very careful. But then the next phrase is the perfect thing that I need to hear and you need to hear. We all stumble in many ways. Aren't you glad James said that? How many of us would want to be a teacher, a coach, a mentor? We stumble. Jesus knows we're going to fail at this. We're going to have times that we speak the wrong thing. There's going to be times that we're going to say something that did not mean harm, but it's going to cause harm. He says, anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. And so remember this, James understands we all make mistakes. The problem is when you stop caring that you're making a mistake. That's the problem. When you don't care how your words are affecting other people, when you don't care what your words do to other people's life, when you don't care what your sin does to your relationship with God, when you stop caring, that's when we're in danger. We all stumble, but it's when we stop caring that we stumble, that we make a mess of our lives and we make a mess of others. And so remember, we are not looking for perfection. We are looking for progress. And in your heart, in your mouth, when you say things, you need to understand that you are looking to progress in the spiritual walk. And so your mouth needs to reflect that. How many of you ever said something you regretted? How many of you are big fat liars? Every person in the room, you've said something you regretted, right? You've said something that you regretted, and I want you to understand when we are putting this thing out there, when we're speaking, when we're hurting people with our mouth, it is simply a reflection of what's inside us. Our mouth is a reflection of what's in our heart. Jesus said it this way, out of the overflow of your heart, your mouth speaks. So, if everything you say is critical, if everything you say is sarcastic, if everything you say is cynical, that's what your heart is full of. Whatever is in your heart spills out into your mouth. And so what God has done is he is giving you this gauge on the dashboard. He's giving you this instrument that when you use it and you start seeing the words that are coming out of your mouth, you start understanding the condition of your heart. If you're always blowing up at people, if you're always getting angry, if you're always speaking out, when you drive, if you're just full of road rage, there's a reason. It's not because you're tired. It's not because you're stressed. It's not because somebody cut you off. It's because there's anger in your heart that you need to deal with. And so if every word out of your mouth is angry, if you blow up at your spouse, if you blow up on your kids, if you blow up on your coworkers, you need to look inside and ask God, what is wrong with my heart? Some of us, our whole lives are marked with words that tear down, words that attack, words that hurt. How many of you have purposely tried to hurt somebody with your words? You may have done it yesterday, especially in relationships. You get into an argument and you know the words that will cut that person the most. And you know what you say is about to hurt them, but what do? You hurt them anyway. You purposely are using your words to tear down, to not build up. And then some of you, you're passive aggressive in it. You have these things in your heart, but you don't really attack the person you're mad at. You just kind of passively, aggressively say things to chisel away at them. You won't enter into their joy. Like somebody comes by, a friend says, hey, man, I got this brand new F-250. I'm so excited. I want you to see my new truck. And you say something like, well, I'm more of a Chevy guy. You just tear them down. Or somebody shows you, I got these new wheels on my car, and you're like, those are pretty expensive. Have you ever heard of Dave Ramsey? And you're just tearing them down. You're not brave enough to tell them face to face there's something wrong in the relationship, but you're going to keep using your words to chip away at them and to tear them down. Many of us do it. Or maybe your problem is you're jealous. Are you jealous? Check your heart. What are you constantly doing? Are you having to give people your resume? Are you the kind of person at dinner, somebody says, hey, I got to go to the Cowboy game. And you're like, I did too. I had sideline passes. Where'd you sit? Oh, really? Can you see the field from there, or did you just watch the screen? You should have just stayed home. And you're jealous. And so you're always one-upping everybody. Any story, you have one just a little better. There's jealousy in your heart, and you can check that with your mouth if you're constantly trying to one-up somebody. It reveals your heart, and your heart is your identity. It drives your mouth. Your heart is linked to your identity. So the sign of a mature Christian is that you control your tongue. And then James gives us 3 great examples. He talks first, he says, when you put bits in the mouths of horses and make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. It always amazed me watching barrel racing because these little 80-pound girls could control a monster of a horse. And that horse would do whatever they wanted it to do. And it amazed me to watch all of that strength under control. And so James is trying to explain, if you let God put a bit in your mouth, he can control you just with a little tug, with a little pull. If you will think and let God control the words out of your mouth, he's going to direct you. The next one is, he talks about a ship. He takes ships as an example. Although they're large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants it to go. So he's saying, let God control that little tongue, because if not, it's going to take you into a course that will destroy you. He goes on and says, likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boast. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue is also a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and it's itself set on fire by hell. He just said it. Your tongue's just a little piece of hell. And it will destroy you, and it will set the course of your life, and it will set relationships on fire, and it will attack, and it will tear down, and it will hurt people unless you let God control it. Unless you check your heart and look in your heart and see that overflow and see that God is filling you, and then let the words reflect what is coming out. All kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. It is restless evil, full of poison. He just says it right out. He says the only thing that can tame the tongue is the Spirit of God in your heart. Listen very closely today. If you don't have the Spirit of Christ in your heart, there's no way you can tame that tongue. It is going to damage everything around you because it is full of poison. It's impossible to control your tongue unless God is in control of your heart. Then he goes on and says, with the tongue we praise our Lord and Father. With it we curse human beings who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth comes praising and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? My brothers and sisters, can a fig tree bear olives or a grapevine bear figs? Neither can salt spring produce fresh water. And so listen very, very closely. If your words do not match a heart of love, if you say you're a follower, but the words out of your mouth are profane, the words out of your mouth tear down, the words out of your mouth destroy, please do not say that you're following God. You can't do both. You can't say, well, my heart's right, I just can't control my tongue. No, your tongue is directly related to your heart. And so what's coming out of your mouth is who you are. So this is when it gets personal. Before we speak, we need to ask ourselves some questions. Before we speak, we need to define what's in our heart and why we're saying the things we say. The first thing I tell you to do before you speak is make sure you're not idolizing someone. Listen closely. You put somebody on a pedestal, they're only there so you can knock them down. Anybody you put on a pedestal, they will fail, they will fall, and then you'll not idolize them, but you'll demonize them. And all of you have had heroes that have made mistakes, and all of a sudden, all you can talk about is how negative and how bad. I remember growing up with some idols in my life that fell. Don't idolize anyone except Jesus. Make sure to don't put somebody on a pedestal because they will disappoint. They will hurt you. So are you idolizing anybody? The second question, are you jealous of somebody? Are you jealous? Look at their life and you say, man, I just wish I had what they had. I wish I had that house. I wish I had their spouse. I wish my kids acted like those kids. I wish I had their job. I wish I had those gifts. I wish. You're going to say bad things about people if you're jealous of them. If you're jealous of somebody, you're going to talk them down. You're going to say negative things to tear them down. So check your heart. Am I jealous? What lies do I perpetuate? Some of you repeat things you know aren't true. But they sound good too. You say things about people that you don't know they're true or not. But it makes you feel better. What lies are you sharing? What gossip do you want to listen to? What gossip do you enjoy? You've heard the old saying, if you don't have anything nice to say about somebody, come sit by me. We love to hear gossip. And in the church, we disguise it as prayer request. I've got a gossip I want to talk about, but since I'm a follower of Christ, I need you to help me pray for somebody. You want to gossip about them, but you clothe it in prayer. I tell people immediately, oh, you don't need to tell me, go pray with them. If they're the ones you're concerned about, go pray with them. I don't need to know. You don't need to pray with me about them. You need to pray with them about it. So find out, what gossip are you enjoying? What is going on? Did somebody hurt you? You want to come and tell me about it, or you want to tell your friend about it? Matthew 18 is very clear. If you have something against somebody, you're to go to them. And when somebody hurts you, you have a choice. You can either grow bitter or you can forgive. But I guarantee you, if you grow bitter, your heart gets filled with bitterness and the words out of your mouth become bitter. It's all related, folks. That's why James is talking about it. He's like, listen, you want to check where you are with God. What is coming out of your mouth? Blessings or cursings? If you hurt, what do? I mean, people hurt you, right? People say things. I've been hurt before, and my first response when somebody hurts me is to counterswing. And it's not with one. It's with everything I got. I mean, I'm coming after you. And I've got a gift. It's powerful. And so I've learned that when I'm hurt, I need to slow down. It's something we have to deal with. But there's sometimes I'm like, you know what, we need to talk about this later because I need some time with Jesus. I need to really put this on hold. We need to talk about it, but I got to have some time because I'm hurt. If I speak out of my hurt, I found that hurt people do what? They hurt people. So some of you are speaking out of hurt, and I tell you, if you're hurt, just wait. Just wait. You don't have to say everything. Just wait it out and find out. Let God work with it. And then some of you, in your mouth, you're playing God. You're playing God. And this is what I want you to see. Are you playing God? Because we judge people, and we question their motives. We evaluate other people's life, and we demand that they come forward and give an account, and then we render the verdict whether they're guilty or innocent. It's an amazing thing what we can do. We play God. It's amazing how we want everybody else to have justice, but we want mercy. It's amazing how we question everybody else's motives, but we don't want anybody to question ours. And so many times the words coming to your mouth are a judgment or a verdict. You're playing God. You're judging someone you have no business judging. So what's in your heart? What's going on? Now remember, we all stumble in many ways. There's only one person who's never stumbled. There's only one person that never said anything that he regretted. There's only one person who had full control of his tongue, and that's Jesus Christ. There's still horrible things said about Jesus, shameful things said about Jesus on a daily basis. When Jesus was walking to the cross, he stumbled on the ground under the weight of the cross, but he didn't stumble in his character integrity. As he was hung on that cross and they were hurling insults at him and they were saying all kinds of things about him, he had the last word. And so today in your life, when you're faced with all of these things, when you're faced with this hopefully conviction that you haven't done what you need to do, that you've had words and you've destroyed relationships and you've wounded your children, when you have all that conviction on your heart right now, remember Jesus gets the last word. And it was, Father, forgive them. So today I want you to start there. Father, forgive me. The words of my mouth have been an overflow of my heart, and my heart is corrupt. For some of you in the room, this sermon doesn't apply at all because if you don't know Jesus, you're never going to get control of your tongue. You're trying to put out a wildfire with a water hose. It's not going to happen. Your tongue is full of evil, set on fire by hell. The only way to tame it is to let God put a bit in it by the Holy Spirit in your life, asking Jesus to come into your heart and take that corrupt heart out. Now, others in the room, you've given your heart to Jesus, but he's not in control. You've pushed him out with bitterness. You've pushed him out with jealousy. You've pushed him out with pain. You've pushed him out with anger. And it's time now to let him back in control. To let him forgive you, but then open up your heart. Evaluate this minute the words you said this past week. Who's in control of your tongue? You or him? Now I'm going to pray for you, and we're going to end differently. Don't leave. We're not letting your kids out. You're not going to beat us to the restaurant. Stay in the room. Because these next 2 songs that our band's going to sing, I want you with your mouth to praise God. But while your mouth's praising God, I want you to evaluate your heart. And I want you to commit to next week letting him control your mouth. Now, those of you that wouldn't even stick your tongue out at the beginning, I hope you've heard this and you will let it apply to your heart. And you let the words of your mouth reflect Jesus this week and see the change. You want to live your best life? Control your mouth. Let's bow. Father, while I do not speak as an expert in this area, and my mouth has got me in more trouble than anything in my life, God, I said things I regret. But God, I pray now, I thank you for that forgiveness. And this week, I want my heart committed to you in such a way that the words that come out belong to you. Father, I pray that over everyone in this room today. And for these next few minutes, let us each evaluate and let you open up our eyes to what's inside. In Jesus' name.
If you have any questions or need prayer, send us a message at info@theavenuechurch.com. We are always here for you. Looking for ways to give from where you are? Text the amount to 84321. And don't forget to subscribe and follow us on social media to stay in the loop. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next week.